All right, let's take a look at Grayson's grades for the Week 2 loss. They're brought to you by Cross County Connection, the region's transportation management association, dedicated to improving the quality of life in South Jersey through transportation solutions. Learn more about Cross County Connection online at www.driveless.com. Let's bring in Professor Scott Grayson for Grayson's grades. They're posted now at 973ESPN.com. Not a fun report card to have to hand out again, Scott, 2 weeks in a row. How are you, man?
Yeah, it was a pretty rough report card to write up for sure. And boy, I'll tell you what, I mean, there's serious questions with this team for sure.
Let's start before we get into the grades. You said serious questions. What's the biggest question that needs to be answered in your opinion right now?
Well, I think we're going to find out coming into this next game what the locker room leadership is like at this point. Because right now, I just don't see much leadership at all on this team, on the field, on the sidelines. Just looks pretty flat all around. And I think that, starts with the coaching and goes down all the way through the players that are supposed to be leading this team. In the past, and Mike, I keep going back to this, but, Malcolm Jenkins was just such an energetic player and a guy who I felt like did a lot behind the scenes. And I really think they're missing his kind of fire and energy right now because I just don't see any of that right now with this team.
So many times in years past after tough losses, Scott, you'd be in that locker room and we'd ask you during Grayson's grades, what was it like in that locker room and who did you talk to? And not having that opportunity now with COVID, like you can't get in that locker room and get a good feel of what it's like in there. And I think you're right that we don't know because you're not in there, but I think you might be right about losing a guy like Jenkins and what that's meant to this team.
Yeah, and I thought they'd be able to have a decent enough energy in there. And you're right, I do miss being able to assess. It was always interesting. The first couple of steps inside the locker, my head would be like on a swivel, like I'm at a tennis match, going from one side to the other, just gauging what I see in terms of body language out of some of those players. And yeah, we're not getting any look at that at all. I mean, they come in front of a computer screen or a camera that's tied to a Zoom, and that's what you see. That's what you talk to. And so you're missing that aspect of what you can kind of analyze behind the scenes. But, yeah, I mean, I thought that, I hated to see Malcolm Jenkins go. He was such a key part to this team for sure. But like I said, I thought there were enough leaders in place. I thought there was enough fire and energy with some of these guys. And now I think it lays solely at the feet of Carson Wentz, Lane Johnson, Jason Peters, who's still there, who's got years of experience under his belt. And I definitely point to Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. And I think it's time for Rodney McLeod to kind of step up. These guys have to be vocal leaders behind the scenes this week. Jason Kelsey, another one that I would throw into that mix. They need to do something to help get this team going. And certainly they've got to do things behind the scenes, and some of them have to do a whole lot better when they're on the field.
All right, let's look at the grades. And obviously you said it was not the nicest report card here. Let's start with the head coach and the defensive coordinator. Coaching overall, you gave it an F.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with Doug because I really expected that when this team has had their backs against the wall, and I felt that bad loss to Washington put the back against the wall to come out and win this game at home and get back to 1-1 and get everything back on track. This team has responded under Doug to adversity. That thing started out bad and it went even worse. They did at least fight back to try to get back in the game, but then and I'll leave that there and come back to it in just a second. But what I didn't see again, and I go to that I thought this stems from Doug at the beginning, I feel like this team is flat. And look, I get that some of these teams and players may have trouble because they don't have the juice from the crowd. I get that, but you're still playing an NFL game. You're a pro. You're getting paid. You got to find a way to motivate yourself in other ways. And I just don't see a team that's playing inspired football right now. I don't see a team with energy. I don't see a team with urgency. And I think that stems from Doug. As far as Jim Schwartz goes, I don't see a defense playing with energy. I don't see a defense playing inspired football either. I see the offense working its way back into the game and the defense giving up a 40-yard run that essentially took all the momentum that they just worked for out away from them.
Scott, what do you make of McLeod's comments that essentially, he said, no, we practiced all week exactly what they were going to do? I mean, does that essentially say they were prepared, they just don't have the talent? I mean, what did you make of what McLeod said?
I I don't buy that they don't have the talent. Maybe they were prepared, but whatever they're doing between preparing and playing the game is not connecting the dots. The communication, I guess, isn't in tow. This team has always done well at stopping the run. I mean, it's been one of their trademarks. 191 yards rushing, and you made Goff look like a Hall of Famer in the first 13 throws that he threw yesterday. I don't get what, and I put a lot of that on the defensive line. There just wasn't the pressure. There wasn't the stopping of the running back or the ball carrier. A lot of times they were at least making contact with the carrier around the line of scrimmage, but there wasn't that gang tackling that you see all the time like you have in the past. Like one guy would kind of hold him up and another guy would come finish him off, and maybe it was a 1-yard gain. I just felt like there just wasn't much of that yesterday, and maybe they were prepared. Maybe they were, but it didn't look it to me. I mean, there was a lot of open windows, big open windows for Goff to find. Higbee made the linebackers look poor, and I just felt like they couldn't hang. I think they were exposed. I look at that down the line. Some of these tight ends, if they have any kind of athletic ability and speed, I think that Higbee just exposed this linebacking core downfield.
Well, I hate to break the news to you. There's a lot of athletic tight ends in this league nowadays, so they're probably going to look at that without a doubt. Let's get to the quarterback. I think that there are some individuals out there a little upset with you that he's not in the F category. You put him at a D.
I know, and I toyed with a D or an F, and I love how that matters, right? I mean, is anybody jumping up and down for a D? Were you in school? I certainly wasn't. Look, whether it's a D or an F, I started out the first line I wrote. Had another stinker of a game. And I ripped apart some of the things he did in there. Look, his pass completion percentage has been awful weeks in a row. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and the 1 interception in the end zone was certainly a backbreaker. I mean, they were on a long drive down the field, just needed to cap it off. It wasn't like he was hurried. I don't think he saw the guy who came in and dove in to catch the pass, the interception. I don't think Wentz saw that guy, and there's some things he's certainly got to clean up. He did a better job of moving around and did get rid of the ball. You want to talk about improvements from last week. He did get rid of the ball and didn't take sacks a couple of times when he could have. That being said, his decision-making remains questionable. I don't see him getting into much of a rhythm in the game. And I just question whether or not he is totally prepared for some of these things mentally, some of these games. At this point now, the questions are rising. I mean, the honeymoon from the Super Bowl is clearly over. Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz find themselves on the hot seat at this point, going into week 3. You've got the Bengals coming to town. You got a game against Cincinnati. You're talking about a rookie quarterback in Carson Wentz, a 5th-year pro. Wentz better look better than Burrow next week, and I don't know that he will unless he can fix up some more things.
How big, you gave them a D, the defensive line. They got a lot of money invested in that line. How big of a problem is that turning out to be so far through 2 weeks?
Yeah, I was extremely disappointed in the defensive line yesterday. I pinpointed them as a reason why I thought the Eagles might win. I thought that they could, with all of them there and healthy, well, maybe not totally healthy, but they were all playing. And when you're playing, you're expected to contribute. I thought that starting defensive line was going to be able to do some things. And, those first few drives for there was no pressure. There was no, again, like I said, no stopping of the run. Sometimes you see Fletcher Cox play his bigger games when he seems like he's playing in the shadow of a similar guy on the other side of the line, and that's what he was finding in Aaron Donald on the other side of the ball. And everybody was talking about Aaron Donald. I thought Fletcher Cox might have one of those games where he said, "Don't forget about me." That didn't happen. I just didn't see this defensive line doing any of the things that it's done well in the past. Didn't help really spark that defense, and that's why Goff was able to complete his first 13 passes. A clean pocket every time. There was very little hurries or pressures coming in, even throughout the game. One set from Brandon Graham, that was it. I just think that defensive line is so huge to any success that the defense is going to have. They failed the defense yesterday, in my opinion.
I want to get your thoughts on Nate Gerry. You gave him a C. I know a lot of people are probably underwhelmed with him. I honestly think, though, that it's almost like asking T.J. McConnell to defend Kevin Durant. Yeah, good luck. It's like, yeah, you get what you get out of Nate Gerry.
Yes, and I think, look, Gary is in a tough spot because he's kind of the most veteran player of the linebackers back there for the most part in terms of getting started and experience, and that's not saying much because he only kind of got into a starting role last season. He needs to be the leader of that group, and he got beat by Higbee pretty badly. You know, he didn't have any help downfield, and perhaps one of the safeties may have missed a coverage assignment and kind of watching for somebody to come out from there that they should come help with. You know, Nate Gary covering an athletic guy like Tyler Higbee, that is a big ask. And that is, you know, I think unfair to ask him to do. You are in the NFL, and if that's what you're asked to do, you got to try to do it. But look, I think Gary is coming around. I think he just needs more time to get more experience, see more things, see what other defenses are doing to them. And look, I keyed on with the defensive line, I don't think the linebacker core was helped much by the play of the defensive line. They do have to play better, in my opinion. They're probably the weakest part of the defense. But I think that they need to find a way to get a little better, and Nate Gary needs to captain that group, if you will, and get them going. I've seen some good things out of Gary, particularly when it comes to trying to help out in run stoppage. It wasn't obviously there as much yesterday, and obviously then he was exposed by Higbee downfield. But I think Gary has some things he can clean up and do, and I think you can see some improvement out of him as the season progresses.
Now, it wasn't all bad. You gave a bunch of Bs. The line, Miles Sanders returning, obviously, that was a big shot in the arm to the offense. I thought Doug called a decent game. It's just that Wentz was that bad. But how much did, getting the line and the offensive weapons, having them, kind of come back, does it give you some sort of hope that they can take that step forward and get out of this mess?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a silver lining, to me, it's I'll start with this. I think this division may be even worse than it was last year, and that was pretty hard to do. But yeah, this division is pretty bad. So therefore, if the Eagles aren't really going to be out of this thing, I don't think until December, even if they can't get this train on the tracks. The offensive line, sure. You want to talk about a positive? The offensive line, to me, huge improvement, and I think a lot of that comes from having Lane Johnson back. Now Isaac Seumalo goes down. Matt Pryor came in, but I didn't really feel like Pryor did bad. I mean, the line, I didn't really realize that Seumalo was out. I knew he was out, but the line didn't look bad after that with him in there. I think Nate Herbig is coming along. I think this line has the ability to pull it together now if they can kind of get some work together. And now with Seumalo down, Pryor will get full reps then throughout the week, I would assume, at that position. And I thought they did really good opening some holes for Sanders. I liked what they did with the running game more. I thought Doug did call a little bit of a better game. There are questions in going for it on fourth down and kicking the field goal versus not going for it on fourth down after the one penalty. But overall, I felt like Doug called a better game than he did the week before. I just don't see this offense playing, inspired football. And I will say that with the running game going, I kept, I was telling my son as we were, watching the game, I just kept waiting for that play action deep shot, and it never came. And you've got speed now, and you never even tried to stretch the field. And I just feel like that's one thing that Doug could have done yesterday. Tried, especially when you got down by double digits in the second half. That's a chance that you might get a play. And you get a flag. I just don't understand why they're afraid of trying to do some of that stuff and draw a penalty, a big penalty downfield to move your team along. They got Deshaun Jackson going. I felt like he was setting them up for an out and up. And they never did it. They never went that way and gave D. Jackson a chance to beat them there. They didn't try Jalen Reagor other than the one screen pass that I remember seeing that Reagor kind of turned inside when he's supposed to go outside. Other than that, I could have seen Doug do a little more with the play calling. But, you look for a positive. I felt like the offensive line and the run game got going better, and that is one thing to build off of next week.
Scott Grayson's grades are up at 97.3 ESPN.com. After every Eagles game, you can see Scott on Fox 29. And, of course, every Monday after Eagles games right here for Grayson's grades. The full list of grades, go to 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Scott, appreciate it as always, pal.
All right, you guys too. Have a good one.
All right, that's Scott Grayson. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, and Grayson's grades are brought to you by Cross County Connection, the region's transportation management association dedicated to improving the quality of life in South Jersey through transportation solutions. Learn more about Cross County Connection online at driveless.com.